Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. Welcome to this July month's AMA session on DevOps Center. You're going to learn how DevOps Center works, and then you'll also see what are the latest updates in the DevOps Center right from the people who build this product. With that said, you can say hi in the channel and you can let us know from wherever you are joining. You can just say, hi, I'm from India, I'm from San Francisco, whatever, and let us know from wherever you're joining. And definitely, this is the best opportunity for you to ask the questions related to DevOps Center. Again, please hear questions related to DevOps Center and a bit of Agentforce and keep this question and answer go in a proper way. With that said, I'd like to remind you with the next slide that if you are planning to make any purchasing decisions, please do not base your decisions on whatever we are talking about today, because we might be talking about few things which might be forward-looking, which is futuristic. So please base your decisions only on what are generally available on the platform. Next slide. If you haven't joined the Salesforce Developer Group Global Community, then we welcome you. We do a warm welcome to join this Developer Global Community, where you get chance to interact with other fellow developers, other consultants, administrators, a lot of other peoples. And what's more important is this community group is being monitored by the developer advocates themselves and also the product managers. So we are monitoring, we are looking at your questions. If you have any questions, you can also post your questions in the Salesforce Developer Global Community. We'll try to answer your questions there also. But what's more important for today is you can ask your questions live and you can directly ask the product managers who are with us. And today you're going to see the product managers Gilson Canario, if you can go to the next slide, and Sri Krishna Padmanagari. So we have these two awesome product managers who work on the DevOps Center day in, day out. So please feel free to ask any questions. You can use the chat window. We are monitoring the chat window. And thanks for all the people who are supporting us with the chat moderation. We have Christy, we have Akash, we have other people who are supporting the chat moderation. So they are also going to give us the questions from there, and we'll take the questions from your chat. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Gilson and Sri Krishna to introduce themselves and start with the presentation and let us know how DevOps Center works.
Sure, thank you, Satya. So let me start by introducing myself, and then I'll move it over to Sri. But basically, so my name is Gilson Canario. I am the product manager of the DevOps Center. I've joined Salesforce a little bit over 3 years, and since I joined, I've been working directly in this product under the developer experience and product team. So I'm based in Florida, but I'm originally from Dominican Republic. So yeah, Sri, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Gilson. Like Gilson pointed out, we both work in the developer space. We both build tools which are used by our developer community, whether you are a low-code developer or a pro-code developer. So these are the tools, right? But we are talking today more about the low-code part. If you move to the next slide, Gilson. Okay, I'm sure many of you would have seen this diagram before, right? Because this is what the modern application lifecycle management looks like, where as a developer, you start planning for your product, then you build the product. Once you build it, you want to test your product and then release the product and also monitor the product, right? You want to understand how your product is faring in the market. So we have tools for each of these areas at Salesforce, right? Now, in the next slide, we'll talk about the different tools that are available, and then we'll move on to DevOps and other things. Okay, so these are the five phases in product level, product lifecycle management, right? ALM, if we call it, right? And then if you see here in the plan phase, we have a bunch of tools where you can use Gus or other tools that are available for project management. We also have, during the build phase, we have builders, we have sandboxes where you can develop your applications, develop, make your changes, and then you can use tools like DevOps testing for testing your product. You can also use code analyzer. Even before you test the product, you can use code analyzer to understand how your product is doing, right? We recently announced the version 5 of it. Feel free to download, use it, and give us feedback. For release purposes, we have DevOps Center, right, where we have the pipeline management and DevOps Center, and also we have a bunch of monitoring tools out there, like which using which you can use monitoring and also backup. Next slide, please. Okay, so like Gilson pointed out, DevOps Center has been around for a couple of years, right? But DX Inspector, this is a new product we've launched for TDX in March, right? This product is it's available on your sandboxes, scratch orgs, right? This is where your actual development happens. While DevOps Center lives in a production hub environment, the DX Inspector lives on your sandbox and scratch orgs, where you actually develop the changes, right? You build your changes as part of the as part of your make while building the product, right? So you might want to make changes like build metadata, right, which are likely to go to your next stage in the pipeline. It could be a staging stage, it can be UAT, or it can be directly in production, right? So you can view all your changes. To view your changes, what we do is there is something called source tracking. You have to enable this feature. If you see this, it's a simple toggle button. You enable this source tracking and we automatically keep track of all your changes that you make in the org. These are all metadata changes. And at the end, we'll also talk about the possible roadmap we have for Dreamforce and beyond, right? Which Gilson will talk about what are the exciting features we are coming up with for DX Inspector. For now, you can also filter the changes, right? Based on once you're connected to DevOps Center from DX Inspector, you can view the changes, filter the changes, and also sort them based on date and uncommitted changes. So this is a very useful tool to understand who made the change, when it was made, and what is the metadata type that you have changed, right? Next slide, please. Now I'll pass it on to Gilson, who will talk more about DevOps Center. Gilson?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. So thank you, Sri, for that intro. So basically, I want to talk about what is DevOps Center. And as Sri mentioned, we have a whole application lifecycle management process that helps you, provide a process so that a repetitive, iterative process that will help you get your application from planning all the way into release, but also observe. And that's what DevOps Center kind of helps you in that purpose, is that it helps you manage this whole application lifecycle management from this tool. Whether now, as the tool that he mentioned, we have a place that is called change management, and then you have the release management. So both sides are even handled, it's managed by DevOps Center. On the change management side, we do have like DS inspectors that help you, where you keep tracking those changes in your org, but also in DevOps Center, you keep track of the changes because once you authorize one of those, once you authorize that environment to work on, DevOps Center keeps track of all those changes as you are doing it in your development environment. And that will even help you not only track it, but show it to you. And then from there, you just, with a few clicks, you just grab the items that are ready to move on, and then you assign it to a work item. And a work item is basically like a ticket or a user, that now you use that to keep track of those changes as it moves through the development lifecycle. So how does DevOps Center does that? How does it keep track? As Sri mentioned, we leverage source tracking, which is basically keeping track of all the changes that you're doing in your org as you're making it. So that way now, if you compare with like ChainSet, before you have to like have a spreadsheet or some post-it or somewhere remembering what changes you made, now DevOps Center, does that for you behind the scenes. So also, another part of the change management, which is source control, is that DevOps Center integrates with source control. So that way that even if you are like an expert or you're starting with source control, you should be able to use DevOps Center, because DevOps Center basically handle all those Git operations for you behind the scene. Not only like the branch strategy, on how you define your process, but at the same time, like all this commit operation, pull request creation, and even merge and approval, all of this is done for you behind the scenes. So that's part of the change management side. And moving along a little bit on the release management, that's where we have the concept of a promotion, which is basically moving changes from one environment into the next. And that orchestration of work is done by DevOps Center. And basically what it does is that it doesn't only deploy the changes to the org, but also merge the branches in source control, in a sense that, or the goal that we're trying to accomplish here or help user accomplish is that once you have your pipeline, you do whatever you can to keep your pipeline in sync. That's a little bit on the release management part. And then with DevOps Center also, we have a concept of hybrid teams or fusion teams. It's basically that, and I'll showcase a little bit that after a little bit later, is that whether you are more on the declarative side or you are more in the programmatic side, both of you should be able to work together from one single place. And the good thing is that you will be up to date with everything, and also your environments will be in sync. So DevOps testing. So we recently launched this on the early this year in around April, which is basically now integrating testing as inside of DevOps Center. So you can set up your testing or set up and automate your testing on each setup and also run the test automatically in a couple of places on your pipeline. And you can design this, even the acceptance criteria, which will be at the work item level as you are setting up your work item approval, but also at the pipeline level, you can set this up. So that's even great. And the good thing is that we are also integrated with a couple of tools, or what we call test providers, so that you can bring those in to DevOps Center. So the good thing also, and I forgot to mention, is that in the DevOps Center side, we leverage source tracking, but at the same time, we're leveraging the metadata API. So all the metadata that is supported by the metadata API is supported by DevOps Center. So for example, if you're making changes with agents, like if you're doing agents change, creating agents, modifying agents, because they are metadata, they are supported by DevOps Center. So you can just continue your ALM process of creating agents. And now with DevOps testing, even we have one of the provider called Testing Center, which is basically the agent testing center. So you test your prompt and how you create the test cases and all the prompts and how you can ensure that not only you are building and deploying your agent, but also you are testing those changes as part as your application lifecycle management. And even with Code Analyzer, you can also check your code as part of your application lifecycle management, which is something really cool. So now I'm going to switch gears and go back to DevOps Center and talk about the use cases that we have. Here, I'm showing what I was referring earlier to, the hybrid team use cases. And over the top here, we have our declarative developer, where once work items are created, which could be by her or by, let's say, a manager or a scrum master, she can pick up the work item, read the requirements, and then she can just open the development environment directly from DevOps Center, because once you authorize an environment to be used with DevOps Center, you can just open it with a click. So that's another cool feature, that you don't have to remember all the credentials from your org. So you build in your sandbox, and then from within DevOps Center, as we keep tracking the changes in your environment, you can just select it, commit, create the review, and then you can even promote from DevOps Center with clicks instead of code. And all of this is using the repository as the underlying technology for this, which will also will align with our programmatic developer, that each work item have its own feature branch that DevOps Center does for you. So he can just check out the feature branch, use the IDE that he's more comfortable of, whether it's the VS Code with the Salesforce extension pack, or even Code Builder. He can just check out the branch, make the changes, commit directly to source control, create PR, all this process. He can does it, and DevOps Center also listens to that feature branch. So at that point, it will keep the work item in sync. So in turns, it will keep PD or the declarative developer and anyone on the team updated with the latest changes. So that's pretty cool. Another use case that we have, which is Ramya, our release manager, is that once you get changes ready to promote, or you have changes as part of your pipeline, her job is to migrate those changes from one org to the next. And she can do it straight from DevOps Center with click instead of code, but at the same time, she can use our CLI plugin to just deploy those changes. And then also, it will keep all the pipeline, it will keep all the Kanban view of the pipeline up to sync, so that everyone on the team knows where the latest changes are in the application lifecycle process. So I'm going to switch, now that I talk a little bit about DevOps Center and what is the use case that we're solving, I wanted to highlight a little bit on the roadmap, high level, on what we're planning to do what we're planning to include for Dreamforce, what's coming next, and even later in the roadmap. So for Dreamforce, as Sri mentioned, and he talked a little bit about the DS Inspector, for Dreamforce, you're going to be able to, now, as you keep track of the changes, you should be able to commit those changes to a DevOps Center project. So now you, once you are in your own realm, like in your own environment working, you don't have to go and switch to the production environment to commit, like retrieve the changes and commit. You can do that directly from the development environment through the DS Inspector. And also, because we are also having the DS Inspector enabling the sandbox, now you can use it for partial and full copy sandbox, which means that you can also commit to a DevOps Center project straight from, like, if you have a partial or full copy sandbox, which is currently not supporting DevOps Center. It's one item that we have heard from users that is a pain point. And lastly, as we talk about DevOps testing, that is our testing framework that is including DevOps Center. This year, we are planning to add more, for Dreamforce, we're planning to add more test providers. In this case, being able to run Apex unit test and also flow test. So that's straight within DevOps Center. So now what's next? Next, and is what we're going to work on post Dreamforce, but it's something that we have plan and prioritize, basically. And it's conflict management and resolution. Here, this is one of the biggest pain points that we heard from the users, specifically because conflicts happen. That's part of the normal development. But today, DevOps Center relies on source control for you to resolve those conflicts. So basically, what we are going to provide is a more declarative experience on top of that, so that you don't have to go if you don't need to source control. So that's something that is coming. The second bullet point here, extensible UI. This one, it's another pain point also that we have got from our users, and it's we started building DevOps Center as a standalone app, but we heard from customers and from users that you are in the Salesforce platform. I am an expert. Allow me to go in and modify my layouts and modify the fields and all that stuff. So that's something that we started launching a couple of those layouts and capability early this year, but we're going to continue adding more extensible UI as part of the core application. We're going to provide a better integration with Code Builder, and also we're going to provide an agentic AI power experience. What the use cases that we're thinking of is basically, my deployment failed. How can you help me, understand understand the problem and how to resolve it? So that's one of the main use cases. And at the same time, having it as a dev assistant, working with you in asking questions about your DevOps Center, and should be in helping you in your day-to-day. Later on, what we're planning to work on is to support more source control system, which is something that we understand is an adoption blocker for a lot of users. So far, we have prioritized a lot on making the application more reliable, solving a lot of the limits that we were having, and a lot of the day-to-day issues that users are seeing. And now that we know that the application is robust and it's in a good place, we're gonna work on adding more source control integration at the same time as other high value and high requested features, such as having a hotfix pipeline, having multiple pipeline at the same time, and even having an integration with Jira. So with that, we have a public roadmap here. Please, scan this QR code, go in and add thumbs up, add your comments on your use case, because that helps a lot on our product team to actually plan and prioritize what are we going to deliver. So help us help you in a sense. So yeah, with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Satya to answer more questions, answer some questions here.
Thank you, Gilson. And yeah, like you can see in the slide, register for upcoming Agentforce Now events as well. But yeah, with all that introduction, thank you so much, Gilson. You introduced what is DevOps Center. You also showed us like what is the roadmap. That was the first question actually. I think Pankaj asked that question, where can we see the DevOps Center roadmap? I believe you already answered that question in your slide there. And we have a lot of questions that are coming in. Let me pick up the next question. So the question is there a plan to make a DevOps Center Fed compliant? Currently, it is not and takes data outside of authorization zone. I don't know. One second.
Yeah, I can answer that question. So at the moment, yes, it is part of our roadmap. It's more in the later piece. You can even find it in the roadmap here. But right now, it is interoperable with if you're talking about GovCloud, it is interoperable, and it doesn't work in some places because we are hosting the information in DevOps. So Heroku, which is what we use to transfer the metadata, it is only hosted in the US. So we do have plans in the future to be able to work outside of the US and make it compliant. So I know I talk too much, but as a short is that yes, it is in the roadmap, but a little bit for later. If I think it's Niket who asked that question. So if you have a specific use case, please go into the roadmap or even send me a message in the community, and then we can collaborate about it.
Okay. So the next question is from Stuart. He asked, "What's the use case for DX Inspector?"
Great question. Sri, do you want to? Would you like to talk a little bit about this on the DX Inspector use case?
Yeah, I can take that question. Okay. So, like Gelson and I mentioned initially, DevOps Center lives in a production hub environment. But as a admin user or a developer, you actually, even before you make your changes live in production, you might want to develop them in a sandbox environment, and that is where the actual development happens, right? It's like the dev environment. It could be a scratch org, it could be a sandbox org, right? Before you actually see these changes live in production, you will have to test these changes. You'll also want to see who made this, whether your changes are working fine or not, the metadata is built as it is required, and all that, right? So that is the reason we want to bring these features closer to developers. So that is the reason you have DX Inspector, where, like Gilson also pointed out, we have commit. We are bringing commit feature to DX Inspector by Dreamforce, right? That is when you can also commit your changes directly from wherever you are, right? A sandbox or scratch org, directly from there to DevOps Center, which lives in the production hub environment.
And I have one related question. See, is DX Inspector tracking environment changes in Sandbox?
Yes, once you enable the source tracking feature on the sandbox, any change you make after that, any metadata change you make after that, will be automatically tracked by a DX Inspector. In case if the metadata is not supported by source tracking, we also have a feature where you can add metadata manually, right? That will again come by Dreamforce, right? Because the source tracking supports for 350 plus metadata types, but while Salesforce has close to 700 metadata types, right? The remaining metadata types, if you're working on those, you can also add these changes manually, and you can, once you add it, you can automatically track those changes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to add a little bit more to that, and is that she did mention a little bit about this. Is that we have there's a big list of metadata that is supported by the metadata API, but there's a few of them that are not supported by source tracking. So even though you cannot keep track of those changes because it's not supported, but we do have the feature down the app components manually that because they are supported on the metadata API, you can just manually look for it, add it, and then you should be able to continue your process.
Yeah.
Cool. And is there a documentation for this? Like, if they want to look at DX Inspector documentation, what is the place from where can they see this documentation?
Sure. We can share the link.
Cool. We'll be sharing the link shortly.
Yes.
And
And if you're in Navneet, I don't know if I pronounce your name correctly, and I'm sorry. If you're talking about DS Inspector, we're gonna share it too. But if you're asking for DevOps Center documentation, we are also gonna share some documentation because we have like installation guide and how to get started and even best practices. You can find it there.
cool. And then one question. Let's say you have to delete a deployment. How do you do it on the DevOps Center? Can we delete a deployment on DevOps Center?
So I'm not. So if John and if John, okay, John Carlos, if you're asking about how to delete a deployment, so if you're asking about canceling a promotion in progress, a deployment in progress, unfortunately that's not supported yet. So that's something that we don't support. It is in the roadmap, but that's something that we have for later. If you're asking about kind of like a rollback capability, like I deploy something and then I don't want this, I wanted to push, I want to remove it. That's also like at the moment not supported. We do have plans to include it because it is something that has been highly requested, but it is later in the roadmap because it's a very difficult problem to solve, and but it is in our plans.
Cool. Uh, One question. Is the back promotions in place now? Last time I checked, the tool did not provide it. Can we do the back promotions?
So what we try to encourage is to move changes from, if you think of the pipeline, like from left to right, in a sense that you want that all the environments and all the branches in your pipeline have the latest changes and have all the changes so that you can keep your pipeline in sync in the future. Like, if you have something that is not there, then once you're testing, you're not testing one to one. So it could lead in the future, to some difficult problems. So we, as of now, we don't have the capability. If you're talking about back promotion from, like, I don't know, if you try to promote, if you make a change in promotion and you want to promote back, that's something that we don't support, and we are trying not to because we want to encourage moving from left to right. We do support moving changes from, like, and we call that feature backsync, which is another specific use case. But if you move changes from, like, your development environment to the first stage of your pipeline, then what you can do is that you can backsync or move the changes to another developer environment that does not have those changes. So in a sense, from the first stage to another development environment, you can do it, but are only changes that you don't have.
Okay. I have one question. It's from an anonymous user. Says, can you briefly explain the core purpose of Salesforce DX Inspector and Salesforce DevOps Center and how they differ?
Okay, do you want
Sure.
I mean, okay, go ahead, sure.
I can take that question, and then maybe Gilson, if you can add more. Okay, so like I said few minutes ago, right? So we started off with DevOps Center first, right? And the DevOps Center is available in the production hub environment. Currently, it comes as a managed package where in your production org you'll have to install this managed package and make DevOps Center available. right? You can create a connected app, and there are installation steps available in the public documentation, right? So once you have DevOps, and you have the pipeline management, where you can manage your pipeline in different stages. You can connect your dev environments, UAT staging, different environments, Salesforce org that you use as part of your uh, release cycle, right? Whatever you have, right? So, but every time you'll have to see the changes that you make in a particular org. Every time you want to commit changes that you make in your dev org, you'll have to go to DevOps Center to do that, right? But what we are saying with DX Inspector is you are actually making changes in your dev environment, which is your sandbox org or a scratch org. You don't need to go to DevOps Center every time to see the changes. You don't need to go to DevOps Center every time you want to commit your changes, right? There are a lot more features that DevOps Center has today, which will bring them closer to the dev community in DX Inspector, so that you don't need to log in into your production org every time you want to make these developer related uh, work, and whether it's viewing the changes, doing any operation like committing the changes, and future maybe something related to review as well.
Cool, got it. So one question from Pankaj, which says, can DevOps Center connect to version control on MS Azure deployed on a private network?
So not at the moment. Like that's something that we have in the roadmap for later. That so far we don't support. We only support GitHub and Bitbucket as beta, but we do have plans in the future to support Azure and even others like GitLab. So it is in the roadmap.
Cool. The next question is from Umashankar. He says, could you give me a quick rundown on our rollback strategy, including the user stories and component level metadata?
Good question. So at this point, like we don't support rollback at the moment. But the strategy that we recommend the users to do is that, because again we're trying to encourage that you try to move the changes from left to right and keep your environment in sync, is that if you promote something or you deploy something into the org and you need to roll back the changes, the best, like what we recommend is, create another work item, and that nullifies or basically, roll back those changes, and then promote it straight to your pipeline, so that, and get it to the stage where you want to roll it back. Because what that will help is that the upstream environment will also remove those changes. So that's the current strategy that we recommend for rollback, is that create a work item, a bug, or however you want to call it, and then promote it again through the pipeline.
Got it. So Kiranmay has same question. I believe you already answered that question. He says how the rollback mechanism will work in DevOps Center. So the strategy definitely can adopt this strategy for that. Yeah. And the next question is, what about the cherry picking scenarios?
Okay, so that's a good question, and we recently have heard some feedback on that, but it is something that we don't support on the current like branching strategy and how we promote or how we merge the changes, because the way that we do it is basically the changes or what is not on the pull request, like in the next stage, and basically deploy those, so like merge those changes. Cherry picking at the moment it is not supported. We have heard the feedback, and it is something that we might consider in the future. But unfortunately, like today, we don't support that still.
Got it. Okay, I think this is a little interesting question. Can conflicts be resolved directly on the DevOps Center with Git? Is the SF DevOps overlap feature able to recognize resolutions that occur in Git? So it's something related to conflicts. So how those can be resolved from the DevOps Center?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, even today, DevOps Center doesn't provide too much tooling or too good experience on helping users declaratively to resolve the conflicts. So what we do rely is on the source control, and and you have to resolve it in Git, like resolve it in source control. And then once you resolve it, you should be able to promote. Let me step back and clarify something too. Is that DevOps Center honors the source control mergeability rule. And the mergeability rule, which is a funny word to say, is that you can think of it like a check and say like, hey, this pull request is you can merge this pull request like between two branches. If you have a conflict, that pull request won't be mergeable. So at that point, your promotion is blocked until you resolve the conflict. That's a side note that I wanted to include. But once you resolve it in Git, like source control, you should be able to promote. And that's what I alluded in the roadmap in a previous like that's something that we are planning to target on the like in the next column of the roadmap, because we do understand that this is something like it's a pain point from the user that we want to take. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. And do we have a timeline when the VCS will be available for Azure? I would rather ask the question a different way. What are the different version control systems that are currently being supported?
Yes. So I'll answer your question and then I'll answer the other question. So today we do support GitHub Cloud, GitHub Enterprise Cloud, and GitHub. I keep forgetting the other Enterprise Cloud and the organizational cloud too. Yeah. On-premise is something that we have later in the roadmap. So that's the first. Oh, and also Bitbucket, which is in beta. Bitbucket Cloud is in beta today. But I don't have a specific timeline on when we are going to support Azure, but that would be most likely next year, second half, or even the year after the next. But it is rest assured that it's a high priority for us to resolve Azure.
Cool. Thank you for answering both my question and that question. And yeah, the next question is: are agentic features aware of all workspaces and guides on splitting release windows?
I don't know if I'm very well equipped to answer that question.
Okay. So the next question is:
But wait. But what I could respond is that if you're making changes in like, okay, so two things. If you're making changes to an agent, let's say you're modifying the agent, you're modifying the prompt, that's a metadata change. So those can be not only promoted but also tested in DevOps Center. Now, if the agent is making changes into your org, like creating layouts or doing like actually changes, if those changes are source tracked and even supported by the metadata API, then those changes can also be promoted and tested within DevOps Center.
so I have one question. I have two questions. One question is so it lets you move changes from sandbox to the DevOps Center, but I have a related question which says, can you briefly? Sorry. What are some core key benefits of adopting Salesforce DevOps Center for a development team, especially for those currently relying heavily on change sets?
Sorry, I got distracted trying to read the question. Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, what are some of the key benefits of adopting Salesforce DevOps Center for a development team, especially for those currently relying heavily on change sets?
Ooh, there is a lot of benefit. I'll say a few of them, and then Shri, you can in case I forgot something, you can jump in. But one is the let's say the ability to add a process to your workflow, the ability to set up your pipeline based upon your workflow and have a repeatable process that with clicks only you can just ensure that everyone is update with the latest changes, but at the same time, also like following what we call like industry's best practices in like test and release and even automation, which is adding test automation within the process. Also, another thing is that DevOps Center uses the metadata API, which Chainset doesn't. So you cover more metadata changes. So that's another thing. Source tracking capabilities, Rick, we can talk a little bit more, but we keep track for you on this. And then just automation and the easy for you to deploy changes from one org into the next without like creating all this inbound and outbound connection. You just set it once and then you just forget. Um,
Yeah.
there's more, but
Perfect.
maybe.
Perfect. Yeah. So all of that pain is gone that we work with change sets. I know. And the next question is, how is DevOps Center different from the other tools like Copado, GitLab, Azure, etc.?
That is a really good question. So in this case, like I cannot tell you like specifically what is different because those tools, like even though we are solving a problem in the same space, but we are partners. Like we even work with them on the tools and the roadmap and all that stuff. What I do recommend, Varum, is that it is dependent on your use case. It depending on what are the features that you need and how you set up everything. So what I would recommend is that try DevOps Center and see if it works for your use case, and maybe try other tools and see what works for you. And yeah, it depends on your use case as a summary.
Cool. That makes sense. Uh, the next question comes from Pankaj again. It says the performance is generally low when it comes to deploy too many components, and also, is there a limit? It seems to add number of components that will be moved and bundled.
So yes, if you, depending on the numbers of components, I think the limit is in the hundreds. So if you're doing like big components, that the performance might be affected. What we try to recommend is try to move changes more frequent, which aligns a little bit with like speed, DevOps, and application lifecycle management, that you want to keep a cadence on how you move changes from left to right. So uh, my recommendation is that try to keep your changes small in like specific work items or with a few components, and keep them moving through your pipeline so that you're not holding value to the customer at the end. But yes, there's some performance and even some limits depending on the how many components, but we're talking about like in the hundreds, like 500. I don't have the exact number, but it's in the hundreds.
Cool. So around hundreds. Okay. And the next question comes again from Umashankar. I think Umashankar and Pankaj are on fire today. They have a lot of questions to ask, but yeah. Will SF DevOps releases be supported by engineers from the Premier support or signature success teams? Means what kind of support they get?
If I understand correctly, the question is basically like support. And yes, we like, there is support for DevOps Center. Like you just create a case, and there's a first level of review from support, and then if needed, then it can just go to a second level where the team actually takes a look and unblock the user. So in summary, yes, their supports covers their support for DevOps Center.
Okay. Uh, the next question is, okay. It's okay. If you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, cool, cool. So, one second. Let me see for the questions once again. It looks like a general chat. Uh, and thanks, John Bello, for answering some of the questions offline. I know you're answering most of the questions, but yeah, John Bello is a product manager
He's the
again. He answers the
he's the
questions.
he's the
Yeah.
best.
Uh, okay. So I have a question. Will this support both linear and non-linear CI/CD pipelines?
So when you are, it depends. Like when we talk about like linear and non-linear, is that mostly will be on the linear side. Like you set up your pipeline from left to right, because at the moment we just support one pipeline. So at that point, yes, it does support linear. We do have in the future like plans to have like multiple pipeline work at the same time. But at the moment, I would my answer would be more on the linear side. And if you want to like find alternatives, you could create other projects, and then prioritize what you have. So I would like that user. Uh, I cannot see the name, but if you can you send me a message either by the community or even on LinkedIn so I can hear more about your use case.
Cool. Yeah, this question looks a little interesting. If there is a conflict, should it be resolved at Kitten or DevOps Center?
Yeah, yeah. We talk a little bit about this and that's why we prioritize this because we see a lot of pain points on this. But so the response is basically like today, it will need to be resolved in Git because we don't have those capability for you to resolve it from within DevOps Center. But it is something that is coming. It is something that is coming. It is in the next column. So hopefully that we can solve the problem or get closer.
That's good to hear.
Yeah,
That's good to
yeah.
hear. Yeah. And the next question is it possible to manage multiple pipelines from a dedicated Salesforce DevOps governance organization?
I'm not sure I understand what it means by Salesforce DevOps governance organization, but what I can respond to the first part of the question is that yes, you can. How DevOps Center works is that you have a project, and then that project is basically a pipeline. So you can have multiple projects working at the same time, but each project is like their own world. Like they work on its own. So in between projects, you can use like even the same stages or the same environment. The only thing that we recommend is that if you're sharing like repositories from one project to the other, to use different branches, because at that point, like if you use the same branches in two projects, that may cause some out of sync situations. But yes, you can have multiple projects.
Excellent, excellent. So the next question is again from Kiran Moy. He asked how to do the destructive changes using DevOps Center.
Oh, that is a great question. So I'll start by saying that destructive changes are just deletions, right? So most of the metadata do support disruptive changes, but some of them don't. So whatever is supported, like whatever metadata that supports doing destructive changes through the metadata API, it is supported by DevOps Center. Now, that's one part of the response. The second part is that even on DevOps Center, and even on the DS Inspector, like if you delete something, source tracking will pick it up as a remove. So it will be the same process as promoting something. It's just that the operation type will be removed. So a lot of explanation. So yes, it is supported.
Perfect, perfect. So I have one question from Pankaj. Is there any plan to introduce Salesforce DevOps certification in the future?
That is a good question, a good suggestion, and we have talked about it. Like we there has been some conversation into going. So yes, I mean we can try to work it out to have a DevOps certification. Um, and we have had that conversation. At the moment, we don't have it, but we can bring it to leadership and try to see how we can prioritize that. But that's a good suggestion.
Okay, cool. And I have one question from Shahid Ali. What would cause an agent to respond differently internally within Salesforce Builder? I'll try to find it from the chat. But yeah, I got this question through moderators. So it looks like it is buried somewhere in the chat, but let me try to ask the question here. What would cause an agent to respond differently internally within SF Builder and externally, public facing site? We are unable to resolve this issue and have multiple asset tickets and no help so far. So it's definitely a support issue, I believe. It's not a regular question, but if you can answer any bit of it, that's
I,
fine.
I'm not sure if I'm also equipped to answer that question. Like, how
Yeah,
would
yeah.
an agent will respond different? I mean, it's more. I probably using the prompt or not being deterministic enough, but I don't know the answer. Like, I'm just assuming. So don't take my response as a response.
That's why forward-looking statement is there. That's why I was
Yeah.
taking this forward-looking. Yeah,
Nah, that's good. That's good.
yeah, cool. Uh, will AI in DevOps be trained to be able to find possible source of bugs by NL component fuzzy terms? So, how AI can be related to DevOps Center is the next question I would say.
So that's a good question. So the way that we are thinking that we are thinking about having AI included into into DevOps. If I'm answering the question correctly, it's like how do we integrate AI with DevOps? Is that we are we want to be able to provide more guidance to the user through AI on how to resolve those issues. For example, um, when a deployment fail or a promotion fail, usually there is a message, and that message is configured by the metadata owner, like the team that worked on the metadata. So if sometimes the message are not like very clear, sometimes they are obscure, or imagine something that you have like I don't know 10 different messages, error messages, and you don't know even where to start. So that's one of the main use cases that we're thinking that AI could help, is that try to help you like understand the problem and where to start solving those problems, and even resolving the problem for you with your guidance, of course. So that's one place where we're thinking of having AI integrated. Another one would be like having it as an assistant, like, hey, I'm asking questions. How many work items are in my pipeline? Why did this work item fail? What work items are assigned to me? So those kind of things, that some of the good use cases that we're thinking to include.
Perfect. So, I have one interesting question here. What is the importance of bundling? Will having not bundle gives me more flexibility to deploy?
Ooh, that is a great question. So let me start by defining what is bundling, and then I'll answer the questions to provide some context. So at the moment of you are promoting work items into your pipeline, or let's say at the moment that you're setting up your pipeline, you have when you're setting up the stage, you select like where do you want your bundling stage to become. So once you define where the bundling is set up, you then all the work items that get into that stage will become like a big bundle or like a big work item. The good thing about having explained this, you have a bundling, and if you don't have a bundling, you have a non-bundling where you have individual work item moving through the pipeline. Now, if you have a bundling, you have more like not only you're following like overall best practices, but at the same time you are testing changes a little bit more reliable than the non-bundling. And the purpose of this, like the way for you to think about it, is that imagine that I promoted work item one to one stage and then work item two. Then if I promote work item two into the next stage, I'm testing work item two in the next stage. So when I test it in the first stage, I'm testing it assuming that work item is already there. So now if I'm testing it in the next environment, I'm testing it without work item one. So you're not testing something in the next stage that is 100% sure as you tested in the first stage. So it's not, it could lead to some issues later on. So that's one of the thing. The second one is that when you promoting individual work items, you are using the work items feature branch. So if you have multiple developers working on individual work items, that would increase the likelihood of having conflicts. We have heard conflicts a couple of times here. So you increase the chances of having conflicts. So that's another thing that, another, let's say, another I'm trying to find the word. I'm sorry, but it's like that's another. That's why you need to go to bundling. That's what I'm trying to say. So the recommendation is try to have bundling in your pipeline, and as early as possible that you have it is the best. I mean, of course, you're gonna lose the flexibility of promoting one work item because that work item is ready. But what you're losing in flexibility, you're gaining in more stability. Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
So.
I know today we are having so many questions. It's being flooded with questions, and also there is a limitation on the time. I know we have
Mhm.
5 more minutes before we go. We'll try to take as many questions, but again, if you are not able to answer the questions here, I'm sure we'll be answering some of the questions through the community. I already introduced the community channel in the beginning, so if you're not joined the community channel, please join the community channel from where we'll answer the questions as well. And one question, it's an anonymous question again. I got from one of the attendees. He says, "Are there any limitations or gotchas with Salesforce DevOps Center that teams should be aware of?"
Hmm. So let me see how I think the biggest, like, there's two things. One is the adoption blocker piece that I mentioned early, that if you're using one of the source control that is not supported by us today, like, there's a limitation. You won't be able to even use DevOps Center. So that's one of the biggest drawback. And then the other limitation that I think is that it's mostly like use case basis. This tool like DevOps Center might work better for you on your use case than another team, like another. If you have a very mature team, there might be some like limitation related to features that in that case that might be a limitation. So what I would say is that try DevOps Center is the best product.
Cool. And again, I want to thank John Bello for taking some of the questions. Otherwise, we'll be flooded with a lot of questions today.
Agree.
Yeah, yeah. The next question is it possible to synchronize by a button click emergent releases deployed via change sets with both Salesforce DevOps Center and the associated version control system? Looks like a lot of things in one question, but yeah.
So yeah, I think based on so what I'm interpreting from this question is that I did a test deployment. How do I if I can synchronize it with DevOps Center? So we don't have that capability today because they're like basically different product, and DevOps Center basically tracks everything that happens in within DevOps Center. What I would suggest to you is that if you made a deployment in change sets, like an emergency deployment to production, is to just go into DevOps Center, create a work item, add the changes there, and then promote it normally through your pipeline. Because what would that do is that it'll keep all your downstream environments, with the latest changes. So that's a recommendation. But today we don't have a way for you to sync the changes from change set to DevOps Center. It is something that we have thought about it, but we have not prioritized it.
Okay. Uh, we are almost on time. Anything specific that you want to share with the audience today,
Hmm.
specifically before we end up this session? There are a few more questions. I'm sure you can post these questions.
One thing I can, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks, Satya. One thing I can say is I know we have limited number of features in DX Inspector, but we're adding, like John also responded on the group, right, in LinkedIn. There are a lot more features that are coming up for Dreamforce. Please stay tuned. You'll be amazed to see the number of features that you will have, and also see how you can quickly develop and deploy changes.
100%. I was gonna say something in the same line of like stay tuned for Dreamport because we have some cool things coming into the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can share the next slide, I just want to also remind people to register for the upcoming Agentforce now events. So we do an event every month. We get the product managers directly to you to answer all of your questions like we did today. And so stay tuned for the upcoming Agentforce now events, and please do join and ask your questions. This is definitely a great opportunity for you to interact with the product managers.
Yeah.
With that
Thanks
said, if you
everyone
go,
for being wonderful audience today.
Oh, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, if you go to the next slide, if you haven't joined, I just want to remind you once again, join the Salesforce developer community. Like I said before, if you still have questions, maybe you get questions tomorrow, day after tomorrow, that's absolutely fine. You can always ask your questions, put your questions there in the Salesforce developer community, where we developer advocates and the product managers try to answer your questions right in the community itself. With that said, thank you so much, Gilson. Thank you so much, Sri Krishna, for being here today and patiently answering all of those questions. And yeah, and a good start with the introduction to the DevOps Center with all of the latest features that we are getting there, and what is the roadmap, especially, and what are the things that they can expect during Dreamforce and stuff. So thank you for answering all of these questions. I really did not filter out any questions there. Trust me, and you have answered all the questions. And yeah, thank you for being a good audience there and asking the most relevant questions here today.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, John, for answering many questions on LinkedIn as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
See you
John.
again. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See
Bye.
you.